Hey everyone, today I'm going to give a short demonstration for my scenario editor for the Journeys in Middle-earth board game. We'll go ahead and begin with a new standalone scenario. The first thing we're going to do is modify the settings for the scenario itself. And we'll begin with giving it a cool name, demonstration. This mission won't be using any threat, but I'll go ahead and leave it open so that I can show the mechanic in the playback app. Now when you first start a new scenario, it gives you a default objective that you can use. So we'll go ahead and set that as our first objective so that in the playback app, when the mission starts, it'll throw up whatever you set as your default objective, and we'll be modifying that right after this. Go ahead and modify the flavor text that is shown. This is shown at the start of the scenario to describe why you're here. And why are we here today? We are going to help the villager get his prized pig to market. Now when you finish a mission, you can change the text, but you can also add different endings that can be triggered based off what the player does while they are playing your mission. So the default resolution, we'll go ahead and modify that. That will be our success text. You successfully took the pig to market. Yay. And we're going to add another resolution. This one will be, we'll just call it fail resolution. And you did not take the pig to market. Alright, and this resolution is going to be triggered by a new trigger that we'll create called scenario failed. Now triggers are just true false values. They start off as false and they get set to true when they are triggered. You can use them to keep track of things that the player does or doesn't do in this case, and they can also be used to fire off other interactions, which we'll see shortly. Okay, the scenario is set up for now. The next thing we're going to do is modify that objective, the default objective. We'll go ahead and change the name of this to talk to villager. This is just so we can identify this and know exactly what we're talking about as we refer to it later. Objective reminder, this is that little blurb of text that's shown at the top of the playback app to remind the players what they're supposed to be doing. And this will just be talk to the villager. And the objective summary, you can have it skip the summary, or you can give it some text to display. In this case, we're going to be telling the player what they need to do. Otherwise, so that when they start the mission, it won't show anything other than the reminder text. So this will be a nice dialog box that pops up and tells them exactly what they need to do. Find villager and talk to him. Alright. And for objective completion, when the objective is completed, we're going to be setting a trigger, and we'll call it, create a new trigger, talked to villager. This will let us know that, yay, we talked to the villager, and the game will know that we did that. When the objective is completed, we're going to start chapter 2, and I'll tell you about chapters in just a moment. So this one is done. I need to go back to the scenario because we changed the name talk to villager instead of default objective. We changed the name, so I have to go back and change the name there. I don't have it detecting that you change the name and proliferate that change throughout, so you have to be careful of that for now when you change names of things. The next thing we're going to do is create our first interaction. There are several different types of interactions that you can create right now. A simple dialog box, a story branch, which will test whether a trigger has been set or not, and fire additional triggers or interactions based off of that true-false trigger that you're testing. Monster threats, I think that is self-explanatory. That creates little critters on the board that you can battle, and you can create them in groups. I think the official app does that also. A stat test that just tests one of your hero's attributes to see whether you pass or fail, and we'll be creating one of those. And a decision, and that's what we're going to be doing right now, because we're going to throw a pop-up dialog to the players and see if they are going to do this or that. So we'll go ahead and give it a name. Talk to villager. This event is going to be a token interaction, and what that means is that on the game board, the tiles, it will get a token, in this case a person token. So if you're familiar with the game, which you probably are if you're watching this video, you know exactly what that means. And since this is a token interaction, you notice this is grayed out because you won't be triggering it by other methods. I do have a couple little help blurbs that you can describes how some of the things work. I do have that in place right now also. Now after the event is resolved, we're going to set that trigger that we set up just a little bit ago, that we talked to the villager. And if you recall, the talked to villager trigger is the one the objective is listening for to know whether you finish the objective or not. That's for the objective. I could have named that better. Objective talked to trigger. You can name these anything you want to be more descriptive, so that you can refer to them within the editor and know what they are. The next thing we're going to do is fill out some flavor text. When you click on them, a villager waves his hands frantically, trying to get your attention. Now the flavor text is shown when you click on the token, just like the official app. It doesn't mean you've decided to use an action to actually interact with it. It's just like a little hint, a preview, and if you've played the game you know what that means. And then when you actually click on the icon, on the token, and then say that you want to use an action to interact with it, it will show the actual event text here. And this is what, in this case, since it's a decision, the villager asks you to take his pig to market because these lands are unsafe and he can't do it himself. He needs a little assistance. Now here's the actual decision, and each type of interaction usually, well, actually it does have two tabs: the general properties, which is pretty much the same for every type of interaction, and then a tab for the specific properties for that interaction type. In this case it's a decision. Now I'm allowing up to 3 choices, optionally 3, but definitely 2, of course, otherwise it wouldn't be a choice, right? So the first choice is just going to be yes, we're going to help him. No. And when you do help him, we're going to set a trigger that will create help yes, help no. I'm going to change this text to be a little more descriptive here on the event text. Will you help him? There, now it's more of a decision. And I think we're done for decision. The next thing we're going to talk about is chapters. We're going to create our first chapter. Actually, it's the second chapter, but it's our first user-created chapter. And we're just going to call this CH2, Chapter 2. It's going to be triggered by that trigger we set up just a bit ago when the objective is complete. Start Chapter 2. Just briefly, I'll go ahead and show you that again. When this objective is completed, start CH2. Just a reminder. Start CH2. So when that objective finishes, it'll go ahead and trigger Start Chapter 2. Here's the exciting part. This chapter is going to use random tiles. I'll show you this real quick. We'll be getting back to this for Chapter 3, but this is the normal tile editor. I'll save this for later though. But if you change it to a random tiles, it asks you, are you sure? Because it's going to blow away any fixed tiles you've created for this chapter. Yes. Now when you hit tile editor, it goes to the random tile pool editor. We're going to go ahead and add numbers 200, 201, and 204. And we'll be getting back to this port down here in a little bit. So what this does is it takes tiles out of all the global tile pool. I call it the global tile pool. This is all the tiles in the game. When you add them to the random pool, it takes them out of the global tile pool so that you can't accidentally add them to a different chapter because they're already used here. So it keeps track of what you're using, and you can take them out and it'll put it back into the global pool. And we'll get back to that, like I said, just a little bit later. And I think we're done setting up Chapter 2. But we didn't really set up Chapter 1 yet, so we're going to go to the tile editor for this one. Now here is the fixed tile editor. This is where you specify exactly where you want the tiles and how you want them laid out. So we are going to be using number 100, and you can move this around. You have a little workspace to use, and you can rotate these anywhere you want. Go ahead and do that just for fun. And we're going to be using 202, and you can move these. I don't know, get that so it fits into there. And on number 202, we can hit Edit Tokens, or we can double click on the tile itself, and it goes into a nice close-up view of the actual tile as it will appear in the game. This is where we can add the tokens. Exactly, we can place them exactly where we want them and set them up here. So if you recall, we created that little farmer dude that we have to talk to. So we're going to go ahead and add him here. We're going to add token, and it's gray because it's nothing yet. And here's the color key. You can easily see which color means what. A person, search token, threat token, and darkness. So we're going to move this. Let's move it here because he's going to be in his village. So we're going to put it next to his village, his little house. And this token is going to be talk to villager. That's the interaction we just created with the villager that gives us his little sob story about taking his pig to market. That changed to purple because it knows it's a person token that we just created. Now this token is going to be on the board when this tile is put down. But if we want this to not drop onto the tile until it's triggered by something else, we could certainly do that by setting a trigger here. So it'll be invisible when you explore the tile, but it will later drop down if it's triggered by something else in your mission. And that's all we need to do here. Of course, we have to set the starting tile. we're going to use this one. We're just going to check that is starting tile, and chapter 1 is done. The next thing we're going to do is create another interaction. This time it's going to be a monster. Now, I'm going to be creating 2 interactions that can appear on chapter 2, which is a randomly placed random tiles. So because the tiles are random, you can't exactly tell the game where to put the tokens. The way I'm doing this is they're randomly placed on the tiles, and this ties into that other little part that I'll be showing you. I'll be revisiting in the random tile editor, the bottom half of the screen. You can put interactions into groups. This is the part I hope this makes sense. You can put random interactions into groups by using, you can name it what you want. In this case it's just orcs, GRP, and then a number. And then you noticed over here this event is in the following group. It picked it up that it's going to be in group 1. So this lets you create as many interactions as you want. Put them into a group or a folder if you want to, synonymous with a file system. Puts them in a group. You can go back to the random tile that you want these to spawn on, and you can give it the group name. It will randomly select, using a number that you specify, it will randomly select a number of those random interactions and throw them onto the tiles as long as they fit. And it gives you all the numbers so you know exactly how many will fit on that tile. So I think that'll be more clear once I create the second group and get back into that other editor. I probably botched that explanation. And this is also a token interaction, of course. It's a threat. The flavor text. Spot an orc on the horizon. And then when you actually go to battle him, charge. Alright, anything else? Oh. After this event is resolved, we'll be starting chapter 3, and that's just a trigger for now, but we're going to create another chapter which will listen for this trigger and know that it's supposed to start, like we did for chapter 2. Let's go ahead and modify the actual monster itself. As I said before, you can create different monster groups of up to 3 monsters each. So we're going to create a monster group. And if you leave the name blank, it will pick up the monster type and fill it in for you. But if you want to give your monster or group a cool name, a menacing name, you can certainly fill that out here and the game will pick it up. And you can modify everything here, the health, the damage, the whatever that one is, I don't even remember. Elite bonuses, attributes, the shield, sorcery, or armor. I think it's called armor in the game, the official app. Its movement, and how much it moves if there's no target. And this is going to be orcs. And we'll just do 1, but we can put up to 3. We'll do 1 for now. And I think that's all we need to do for this one. Now when you edit this, when you click on different things like bloodthirsty, armored, they show up here so you can see right off without having to go into the actual little editor part. You can see that it's bloodthirsty and armored, and it's marked as elite because of that. But we're not going to be doing that today because this is a normal little critter. I think we're done with the monster threat. No Cortana. On that monster group we just made, let's go ahead and change my mind so I can show you how the shield, the armor system works, just like the official app. So we'll give them 1 shield, and we'll go ahead and do 2. Okay. Now we're going to be making one more interaction event for this little mission, and it's going to be a stat test. And we'll call it hill climb. And it is a token interaction search. For the flavor text, you spot something glimmering at the top of the hill. So you can choose to go check it out. Test your strength in this case. For the actual action text, you gather your strength and attempt to climb the hill. Very good. Now, the actual stat test. It is going to be testing might. Now here's where things get a little interesting for this stat test. There's a different settings we can do. It can be your normal pass-fail, at which point you can't try to attempt this again. In this case, we're going to be making a progressive stat test, which cannot be failed. If you remember, if you've played from the actual official app, a progressive test is just one that you can keep attempting until you pass it. A success value, we'll just put it for 2. Now I have one more option for a progressive stat test, and that's a simple pass. And that's the same thing as a progressive test, except when each time you attempt it, the numbers don't add up to any previous attempts. So if you attempt it the first time, you pull a 1 success, then you attempt it again, you get a 1. It'll add that to the previous one. Now you have 2. A simple pass has to be, you have to pass it, you have to be successful in 1 shot, so it does not accumulate. It's not cumulative from any prior attempts. So we're going to do a progressive so I can show you. And when you pass the text, nothing up here, came all the way up the hill for nothing. The progress text, this is the text that's shown when you're not quite successful, but since we can't fail, you didn't really fail either. You inch your way up the hill. Keep going. Alright. And, okay. I think that's all we need to do for this one. One more thing, because this is going to be an interaction that's pulled from the random group, we have to add it to that group we created. There's our GRP1. This event is in the following group, GRP1. So now we have 2 interactions in the group. Now, this is I hope it becomes more clear here. We go into the Chapter 2 tile editor, and we're going to revisit the bottom half. Now at this point the editor knows there's a group that we've created. So there's GRP1. There are 2 token interactions in this group, so it knows that we've put 2 in the group. Now it also knows how many spaces are available in these random tiles that we're going to be putting in this chapter. So there's 2, 2, 2. So there's 6 spaces available, and it picked that up correctly. There are 6 spaces available in this tile pool to place tokens. Randomly use how many of the interactions from the selected interaction group up to a maximum of 2. So we're going to go ahead and place both of them. But if I put 1 here, because I have 2 interactions in the group, with a 1 it will only randomly pull one of those 2 and put them somewhere on one of these tiles randomly for you. So everything's kind of smart. It figures it out. So you could potentially create a whole bunch of different interactions and only use 2 or 3 out of that group to really make things random. Each time you play it, it'll be different. The more different choices you give the game to draw from, you can add more spice. So you can replay your missions. And that's good for that. In this case, we're just going to be using both, though. We're not going to be just using one or the other. We need both of them for this demo. Alright, we're almost there to the finish line. We're going to create one more chapter. Chapter 3. It's triggered by Start Chapter 3 that we created. And this is going to be fixed tiles. Numbers 300 and 303. Let's just dunk dunk like Legos. Trigger tile number 300. We're going to have we need to create it first. We'll go ahead and leave this for now. Let's go ahead and create that interaction token for the market. This is going to be a branching interaction, so you'll be able to see how this works. This is the one where it tests a trigger, whether a trigger has been set or not, and it will fire additional triggers or interactions based off of that. I'll go ahead and call this market. It is a token interaction, and search or person, whatever. For the flavor text, you see the market up ahead. And then for the actual event text, you enter the market. Alright, easy enough. And we'll modify the branch here. If this trigger has been set, help yes, that's if you clicked on the yes button during the decision interaction. Remember, it set this trigger. So if this is true, we're going to be setting not an event but a trigger, so we'll do that radio button. If it's true, we are going to set scenario ended, which is the trigger assigned to the default scenario text, the successful one. And if you did not set this trigger, if you did not decide to help the villager, we're going to set it to scenario failed, which will trigger the other resolution text we created, if you recall from the beginning, that you did not help the villager. And that's all for that one. Now we can go back to chapter 3 tile properties and go ahead and add that token now. And it's not really, doesn't really look like a marketplace, but hey, maybe it's an outdoor marketplace, huh? And this is going to be the market we just created. And I believe that's all we need for that. Let's go ahead and save this. Demonstration. And I think we're ready to go to the playback, and we'll see if we created this mission correctly. Oh, I just want to show you briefly, these files that it creates are just JSON files. If you're ever come across those, just text, it's human readable, so you can go in, you could literally go in here and change little values if you ever wanted to do that for some reason, but it's just a text file. We're going to go ahead and go to Unity, and we're going to start the playback of this mission we just created. Fingers crossed.
Alright everyone, so I had to totally record this next segment of the video all over again because my notebook computer cannot handle recording the screen while playing back the Unity engine. So I'm using my phone to record the screen, so hopefully it works out. I'm starting the app right now. This is the title screen. I have a little parallax effect going on when the camera raises up. Now here's our demonstration level that we created a few days ago now. We'll go ahead and set up 2 characters, it doesn't matter who. Help the villager get his prized pig to market. Find the villager and talk to him. That was our objective that we set up, our first objective. Prepare the following tiles. So far it's very similar to the official app. Place your heroes in the indicated position. Now we have full zoom in, zoom out, rotate. You can move around, double click a tile to move into it. So we're going to go ahead and click on the farmer, or the villager. A villager waves his hands frantically. Let's go ahead and use an action to investigate. The villager asks you to take his prized pig to market. Will you help him? I'm going to choose no here so that you can see the story branch in effect when we do get to the market. Prepare the following tiles. Now, if you recall, this is chapter 2, and the tiles in chapter 2 are completely randomly generated, so you could play this mission again, and these will lay out completely differently. Go ahead and explore some tiles here and see if we can find those 2 tokens that we created. Okay, there's the search one. We'll go ahead and do that. You spot something glimmering at the top of the hill. Search. And this is the test interaction that we set up. You gather your strength and attempt to climb the hill. Test for might. I think we set it to 2. We'll go ahead and do 1. You inch your way up the hill. Keep going. This was a progressive test, so we can attempt it as many times as we want. Go ahead and do it again. Do another one. Nothing up here. All that way for nothing. And this one, explore the tile. Yes, that should be the threat token. There it is. You spot an orc on the horizon. Investigate. Charge. Place the enemy figures in the indicated position. Prepare the following tiles. That interaction triggered chapter 3. Not defeating the creature, but actually finding the creatures. And there's chapter 3. And just to show you the combat screen, there's our orc down there. And all these different modifiers to your attack, they are functioning. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to go through, take these guys out. Remove 2 orc hunters from the board. You or a nearby hero gain 2 inspiration. Yay, us. Now we can go on our way and find that market. Explore the tile. There's the market. And this one just be empty. There's the market. You see the market up ahead. You did not take the pig to market. So it knows, because of that trigger that we did not set by choosing yes earlier in the story, the end objective knows, the scenario knows that we did not take the pig to the market and we possibly failed the mission. And that's it for the scenario that we created.